You can share it with the rest of your team or look back and review on, but it will be available and sent out to you next week. Okay, can everybody see my screen okay here? I should be on the admission homepage. Great. Okay. All right, so we're going to start here with just this admission homepage. And we're really just going to kind of start where we are. So we're going to look at like the candidate's record, what we can see on a candidate's record, what data we're collecting using our inquiry forms, and then using that data from that candidate's record, how we can pull that information out and build custom queries. And then we'll use those custom queries to then communicate with our families. So, okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to pull out a candidate's record. So we're going to look at our demo candidate here. We have James. So everything that we can see here on our screen is all queryable. So you think about every piece of information that we've inputted into any one of these lines, from middle name to preferred name, to where Jimmy went to school, to what his interests are, to what his admission decision is all queryable, which is amazing. So everything here on this first page, and a lot of this information you are gathering in that first inquiry, and then collecting more as they move through the application process. Okay, so let's talk first a little bit about that candidate's role and how they do move through this admission process. So we spoke a minute ago about the inquiries. So when a family actively engages with you and fills out an inquiry that they are interested, as soon as that family hits submit on that inquiry and it's processed, that candidate, so we're going to say Jimmy here, now is given the role of prospect. So prospect means that they have inquired, but have not done enough, completed enough application checklists to become an applicant. So your school as a whole will decide what checklist items, and we'll pop on over here to this checklist item tab. And we can see Jimmy hasn't done anything for this year, but you'll decide as a school in your registration season, which of your checklists do you consider are most important for them to have provided enough interest to then move from that prospect role and then move into that role of applicant. For some schools, it maybe is something as simple as they just need to pay the application fee, and that's all they need to do, and now they've become an applicant. For other schools, it may be that you need to collect, the application fee, plus we need their demographic information, plus we need where they went to school. So it may be more, 4 or 5, but typically it's on the smaller, it has to be at least one, but it can be, generally around 4 or 5 items. So then once those 4 or 5 items are completed, then they will move to applicant. They will have their admission decision, will move from that NA, which is what's listed when they're a prospect, and then they'll move into that not ready for review. So now they are considered an applicant. An application record is, your candidate will now have an application record, which you can see here. Jimmy was an applicant in the 25-26 year. He did enough checklist items that he now became an applicant, so it created that record for him. You can see now that he has moved on and applied in our demo for 26-27, that he is still a prospect, and we saw on his checklist he hasn't done anything, so he does not have an application record. So you can see for 25-26, he was in that not ready for review. But then here in 26-27, he has a decision NA. Once our candidates have finished, all the checklists that you as a school have decided need to be completed in order to move on to that review process. They will automatically move, their admission decision will then move from not ready to review and will move to that pending review. That's when you'll be able to create a review record for them. They'll move on. You can be reviewed by whoever you have set up, whether it's division heads or just your admission office. And then after that candidate has been reviewed, then you'll render that decision. So hopefully you'll be able to accept that candidate. And then they will move on to enrollment and then become a future student. So that's where we are in our process, is our roles. Okay, so moving back, so how do you track that? How do you keep it going? How do you keep up with all of them? So what we have is on our admission homepage, this is a great, just like so many great things are canned in here for you to get started and track that process. And then later we're going to tweak some of these queries and make them usable for you in your office. So looking at this candidate home pages here on the left, so we have these canned queries that are built for you. So essentially you can use them every day, but they're also just a great starting point to be able to build and tweak them to exactly the way that you need it. So kind of looking first at this find candidates query. So if I click into it here, here's our query. And on the bottom left here, we have this admission. You can see that this is an admission candidate table. And because it's an admission candidate table, it's brought in some design fields that are specific for the admission office. So we want to know like what grade they're applying for, what school year they're applying for, what their current school is. So specific to admission. So that admission candidate table is a great place to start. Let's more people in. Here we go. Okay, so if I scroll down here to the bottom as well, we can see that, well, it's actually right here into this year applying for, we can see this is the first criteria that's limiting our results. And one being, this is the active admission year. So the active admission year is set by your office on the admission homepage. And if we scroll all the way down here to the right, and I keep scrolling, you can see this active admission parameter. And so this is what determines, you can see it's for us, it's set to 2025. That's what's going to pull into this active admission year. As a school, you can change this. If I click into this, if you as a school are your main focus is not 25, 26 anymore, you're opening up your 26, 27 season, you can click into that parameter and then you can change it to the 2026 parameter, update it, and then when you go back to that query and run it, it's only going to pull 26, 27 candidates. Okay, so that's how that active admission year. Now we can, in that active admission year, if you would like to look at more than 1 year, you absolutely can. If you scroll, so I'll pull in that 26, 20 year, 26. If I pull in both, then we'll be able to see it when I run it. So you can see 25, 26. And if I come over here so I can see a little bit better, if I click into that year applying for it and I subtotal it, subtotaling is my best friend, and I run it. Okay, now I can see my candidates in both the years applying for. Okay, great. So then also going back into our table here, this table is set up with one more additional parameter that's filtering its results. And it's going to be this role filter. So you can see that it's filtered by prospects, admission leads, and applicants. So admission leads are the only role that we didn't talk about. So not every school uses admission leads, but an admission lead is set up, it's someone who is not actively inquired. So they did not fill out that inquiry form. So they didn't automatically become a prospect. So an admission lead for you guys can mean several different things. It could be a family has recommended another family, and so you want to keep track of them because you have your information, but they have not actively sought you out, but you'd like to include them in your communication, your newsletters. You can create an admission lead role. If you have someone who is an infant or someone who's pregnant, we get a lot of pregnant ones, like, alumni. You can put, baby Sullivan in there and have them as an admission lead, and you can track them by year. You can make sure to reach out. But word of mouth, somebody maybe just made a phone call but didn't actively inquire, but you gathered some of their information. An admission lead is a great way to keep track of those candidates. So for our purposes here, I'm going to go ahead and take out the admission lead. We're just going to focus on the prospect and applicant. And I am going to subtotal on it because once again, subtotaling is my best friend. And if I run it here, now I've subtotaled, I can see every prospect and every applicant in the 25-26 you're applying for. So they are all here. So it's a kind of a common question of, where is everyone? Okay, so we can start on that find candidates query. Okay. All right, and if I go back to my admission homepage here, and to do that, if I just click on admissions here, it's going to take me straight back to that admission homepage. I have several other queries. So if I want to just look at prospects, I have this find prospects, and if I click on it, and I still have that active admission year, that's going to be in all of your canned ones. If I scroll down to the roles section, you'll see prospect. And so that means it's only pulling those 25-26 prospects now. And then moving on, I can pull, like maybe I only want to see my applicants now. Then I can click on my applicants. Once again, active admission role, active here. Okay. Now moving on. So then we have same with admission leads. I can look for applications, the same. And here I can do a little more broad if I'm wanting to look for just people in general and can narrow down my searches. I can here. And then moving on to this events tab here. So if you are a school that uses admission events or admission visits, here is where you can find all of your visits that have had somebody actively book a visit. So if I click on that visit, we can see my event type is the visit, role of prospect, and role of prospect is not the same as our candidate prospect, but instead our visit role here, set to that active admission year. If I run it, I can see now, I can see that Wayne is coming on February 21st at this time. And so it has a whole list here of my visits. I can also track my visits. I'm going to jump over here to our today section. We have this admission calendar. If I click into my admission calendar, it now is going to give me results from really just like lots of things that are going on in your office. One, as an inquiry has come in, I can see that Smith has filled out an inquiry. I've also received a new application. And then also we're going to track our visits. So we can see over here, our visits are listed on this calendar as well. Okay, our student visits. All right, and if there's anything that you want to track also on the calendar, if somebody completes a checklist, so let's say in the portal, you want to keep track daily of who's completing a certain checklist item, you go into the checklist library here. Let's say I want to know when somebody's filled out, pay their application fee. I want it to show up on my calendar, for whatever reason. If I go into that actual checklist item, I can click on that display on calendar. And so when I do that, I don't know if we have anybody who's actively paid in the demo. And then if I go back to my calendar and I run it, you would see, I think if we'd actually had somebody pay, it would show up as an item here. Oh yeah, here we go. So you can see on this date, we had an application fee paid. So this is a super handy little trick here. Okay. And then speaking of our admission calendar and admission events, we also have in this today section here, this admission events pending review. So if I click on this, anytime somebody signed up for an event, either through the portal or you've added them to the actual event, the visit or the admission event, it's going to show up here until the event, because they'll by default in the event will be set to invited. And then once you set them to confirmed, attended, not attended to any other of these values, they'll come off this list. So this is a pretty handy list to look at if you needed to reach out. If you're not using our admission visit notifications or event notifications and you need to send your own communication, we can look at that later. This is a great place, to look at every day. Okay, so let's look at oops, going back to this query section over here on the left, down here, also this find admission history event is super helpful because if we go back and we look at our friend Jimmy and down into our admission history, you can see that Jimmy has applied twice, right? So he applied for 25, 26 and then 26, 27. If I use this find admission history query, it's going to pull those same parameters that we looked at in that candidate one, which is that year applying for, grade applying for. But now we specifically want to look at just that particular year. So that find admission history query is a really great one to have. We have a question. Let's see. Is there a difference between applications and applicants? Absolutely, yes. So an applicant would be someone who has completed, is a role. So that's somebody who's completed those checklist items that you've required necessary to become an applicant. They'll become an applicant, that's the role. The application, once they've done that, an application is created. So I can see here on this hyperlink with Jimmy here, I can click into it, and this is Jimmy's actual application. So it mirrors what's really kind of going on the general tab, but we can see grade applying for, we can see the checklists that have been completed, admission decisions, the admission notes. So what's great is as Jimmy moves from the 25-26 registration season and then moves into that 26-27 where his general screen is going to change, that information, that applicant information is going to be preserved. So it lives here in this 25-26 application. So it's amazing. Like, let's say the review section is here too as well. So let's say Jimmy applied and we denied him. And so we have all of our division heads and admission personnel that had notes as to why Jimmy was denied. And so then let's say Jimmy, he's applied next year. Well, you have that information and you're able to go back and see, yes, he was denied. Yes, here are the reasons. Here is my interview note, my mission notes, my interview notes. It all will stay contained in this application. Okay. If that answers, let's see. Yes, so you can absolutely do something similar with inquiries referring to, oh, okay. So unfortunately for the admission calendar, there's not a way to, because the inquiry doesn't use checklist items, whereas the admission portal does. So the admission portal is what you can flag to show up on the calendar. So inquiries are, unfortunately, you can't do that. So, okay. All right, so like going back to that admission homepage, so here it's just like all of these inquiries are a fantastic way to just get started and start building what you need, which we'll do in just a few minutes. So let's look at this today section. This today section, so it's a pretty great workflow on queries that you can run daily to take a look at. And we did look at that admission calendar. So let's look at that and just new inquiries on our today section. So offices use this query for different reasons, but really the recommended way to use this new inquiry checklist as it is brand new inquiries. So if we look into this, click into the design section, we can see what's pulling. It's an individual event. So an inquiry is considered an event. We can see our event type is inquiry. And then we can see here what's important is this follow-up complete is set to no. Okay, if I run it, we can see this follow-up complete box. None of them are checked. So that means it's set to no. So as an inquiry, as someone submits an inquiry, they're going to show up on this query for you. And it's going to show up by your newest is going to be at the top. So I know that Martin has filled out an inquiry. And then you as an office can decide, do I want to assign an admission counselor to them? Are there some items I need to do? Do I need to go? Do I want to send them a specific email? Do I need to make a phone call? Do I need to set up a shadow day? It's letting you know, hey, these are brand new. We want you to be aware of it. Do you need to do anything with this candidate? And so you can see here, you can type in notes, and I'll show you where that notes lives. So if you type in a note, if you made a phone call, you can, and you just click the update, it's going to live here. And if I click into Martin's record here, and the inquiry is considered an event, if I click onto the event, I can see there his event. He's applying for 2728 7th grade. And then there's my note. Okay. So if you want to write a note here, you're also welcome in your admission on the record to put it in just admission notes. So whichever makes the most sense to you guys. And then when I've done everything I want to do with Martin, I'm like, he's off, he's set, he's good. If I mark this checkbox as follow-up complete and I update that record, Martin's not going to be on my list anymore. Doesn't mean he's disappeared. He's living on that prospect query that we looked at a minute ago, but he's no longer in my new inquiries query. Could you batch update the file? Absolutely. So like this one, we have like a million of them. So because we just don't update them so you guys can see them, but 100%. If I go up to this lightning bolt here, my action menu, I can batch update. I can select that follow-up complete. I can select it to yes, and I can update all 65 of them. And then I will start with a brand new inquiry query, right? And so then I know that these are only my newest ones. Now let's say I'm not ready, like I only really want to get rid of these guys. Like, yeah, these guys I talked to this morning, they're done. You can, if you select whoever you want to batch update and then go back up, select that batch update. I'm going to do my follow-up complete. I'm going to select it to yes. Now you can see I'm only batch updating 5 records. So if I update them, coming through, and then they're gone. Okay, super handy. So for me, working in the admission office, I kept in it, whatever works best for your guys' school, but this is something that I would look at every day. I would mark them follow-up complete. So I'm only looking at today's inquiries. All right, so let's go back to that admission homepage. So we looked at new inquiries. This one, just to kind of point out, can be a little confusing. This says new applications. So for me, I would think new application. So I would think that that is a candidate who just completed all of their items. So now they've become an applicant. It is not. If I go into this design of the query, we can see that the filtering on it is for pending review. So what this means, and we can see it over here. So what this means is this query, this new applications, is candidates that have completed all items that are required for review. So essentially they're done. And so the system automatically will move them from not ready to review to pending so that you guys can review them. So in hindsight, I mean, I would love to rename that to like new applications for review. So they are new applications, but I might add that for reviews on, later. Okay, so we looked at our mission calendar, today's visits. So my candidates here, they're not going to show anybody for me, but I'll go back to our little candidate here. So when you assign an admission counselor, so let's say we're going to give it to Susie, right? When Susie's on her homepage and she clicks on my candidates, if I'm Susie, it's going to list Martin here on her list. So you can kind of keep track of who. How is new applications different from pending review? It's a little bit different and great question. So we have pending review. So we'll hop into it. So you can see. So then back into the design. So this is an application status of pending review, which is a little bit different from, I come over to pending review here and I go into the design as this application status category. So this is the category. So a category, and if I run it, you can kind of see a little bit different. The application status category contains not ready for review and pending review. So it has both. So you're going to see this this query over here, the pending review. The pending review is going to have both not ready for review and those who have become applicants, and also those who have completed all items, Whereas this one is just the status, which the status is, let me go to my candidate, is like this decision right here. They're only going to be pending review folks. So we see we don't have any not ready for review. That's where that can get like a little tricky. But no, that's a super great question. Okay, so moving on down. So we looked at our events pending review. Anybody that's interested in doing admission events or setting that up or configuration, we have some great ILTs, individual like the learning sessions that you can hop onto for the visits. Also, you can book a support consultant call and they're happy to walk you through setting up or just discussing admission events and visits. So doing any of that. All right, last kind of our inquiries before we start building and then looking at communication are these pipeline queries here. So pipeline queries are built by our engineers, and I'm going to hop into this grade one here. There's not a lot of special configuring that you can do. There's a little bit that we can tweak to make it your own inside this pipeline report. But the pipeline report, when I go into the design, we can see down here, it's this like financial aid, this queue. What it is the engineers have taken several different queries and put them together so that we can then run and get this information. But this is super helpful. So when you're meeting with your, you're doing your board reports and your enrollment management, these pipeline reports are so helpful. So you can track through what's going on with your year. So right now our pipeline is pointed to 25, 26. We can see our goals are set here. And then we can see where we are in relation to those goals. So we can see for my pre-K, I've had 124 inquiries. Here, you can see my total inquiries for all of my grades. But then this is it's super helpful. Is how I can see my year to date. So I can see where was I at this time last year with my inquiries. So you can see, unfortunately for Veracruz University, we're behind. So we need to catch up. We're behind in our pre-K. But it looks like we're ahead here in kindergarten. So we can see those year to date. If you're tracking visits or using visits, it's going to show up here and what's scheduled and attended. So you can start using the how many visits versus applications. You can start tracking that. Your prospects, you can see that application goal. You can see how many applicants, where you were on your applications year to date. And you can see that conversion. So this is also great. So that yield, so those from prospect to applicant here is at 31%. You can run comparisons. Yes, absolutely. So we look at, and if we track here, and I'll show you in just a second. So we track here, we can see the number of applications that have been completed. And we can go all the way through admissions into how many were accepted, waitlisted, withdrawn, and you can see our totals here at the bottom. And then even over into enrollment. So how many new enrollment goals versus how many accepted offers, how many have declined. So those yields, so we can start tracking. So this tracks obviously our current admission year. So that active admission year is pointing to, and so that year to date number is pulling then from our 2020, 24, 25. But if you need to look at past years, that's one of the things you can tweak in this query. So if I go into the design, if I, click on it here, I uncheck that active admission year. And so I want to go back and look at 24, 25. I can, and I can run it here. And so now you can see it's pointing to that 24, 25. And so then when I'm looking at that last year to date, now it's pointing at that 23, 24. You can do that. There's not a way to put multiples in there at one time, but without it being not clean, but you can do one at a time. And these are easy to project in those enrollment management meetings. Okay, great. So that's our pipeline. And so if I go back into the pipeline report, you can see they've broken out for, here's just like year to date total. So it's your totals at a glance here. And then here it's just specific if you need to know pipelines by gender, we looked at grade, resident status, feeder schools. So this is great. We also have very similar reports here with enrollment, so just enrollment. So you can track here. That is super helpful. Okay. All right, so these, and then last but not least, before we start kind of building some queries, is these are reports that are pre-built for you. So we looked at that status category, so it's easy to check, you know, your wait list, you're denied, there's a withdrawing here. You can click at a glance, your new enrollments, re-enrollments. This right here is going to point to AP2, so you don't need to worry about it. But here, kind of pointing out this section we'll work on in a minute. You can pin workspaces to your homepage, and we'll do that. So, all right, so let's build some queries here. So we did okay, so we kind of looked at our candidates here. Let's build one I think you guys can super use. Let's do a find candidates here. So I'm in this candidate table. We're going to have a point to this active admission year. I'm going to go ahead and take out admission lead. Let's just look at our applicants and prospects. And I do want to point out something different, something that is super helpful to know and did not learn kind of right away, but the difference between role and roles. And so if I run this, you can see right now it's not checked. So it's not going to display in my query, but this one's checked and you will. So if I run it here, so roles is going to display every role that that candidate has. So if they have more than one, so we can see Michael here, the bike rider, it's going to show all of them. If I get back into my design, so a lot of times you'll have that checked because you want to know. You can see here with our role, we have this little red multi-line box. So if I were to check this, then we are going to see that it's going to only list one role on each line. So if someone like our bike rider has more than one, it's going to start duplicating those lines. So whenever you see this, just know it's going to duplicate that line. So if you're like, why do I have so many of Martin? You know, uncheck any of those. And that's why this one is super helpful. This one will check it, and then everything will appear on that one line. All right, so here's just our regular candidate query. I want to be able to run something every day that tells me who do I have, who is working. Let's go into this design here, and I'm going to go down to that role, which is kind of my best friend again, and I'm going to subtotal it. So now I have my role. So if I only want to look at applicants, I can. Okay, I'm going to go into the design. So I have my grade applying for campus resident student. Now I want to know what checklist items do they still have to do. So if I come over to this search field, I can click into any of these parameters and start clicking and adding however I want, right? Or if I'm not sure where it lives in this giant list, I can just start typing it until it shows up. Okay, so I'm going to grab this one and I am going to save this query and I'll put it in the chat for you guys to be able to use if you want to later. But I'm going to grab this outstanding admission items here. I can see, I really want to know, okay, I'm curious of where they are in their admission decisions. I'm just going to move it up. I don't really need to know resident, student, campus. I really want to know their grade applying for. Do you want to show their year applying for? You can see if I grab here, these little dots, I can move them around however I want. I'm not really interested in city state. I am interested in all of this. Let's see what else we want to add in. Now let's take a look at it and we'll run it. Okay, so now I'm getting a little bit more information. So I can see my candidate here. They're listed as a prospect. Pick this up. I can see every checklist item that they haven't done that still needs to be completed here. So at a glance, I can see. I can see Robert here. He only has this one item left. Like maybe I need to nudge him a little bit just to fill that out for him to be complete. Okay, collapse here. Into our applicants, we can see a little bit more. As I scroll over, Let me go ahead and check. Oh, oops, I subtotaled it. That's fine. Okay. All the rules. Okay, so I can see grade applying for, I can see my admission decision, and because these are prospects, it's set to NA. But I can see here who's working, who's accepted, right? If I want to look at their candidate profile, it's here. Look at, I can see when they've inquired, I can see when they visited, whether their application dates, schools, you know, where they are, whether or not their staff, faculty, staff kids, siblings applying. This is really great, just like gut check. I can even sort it some more based on that decision. So if I subtotaled more here, then my prospects only have the one. So if I collapse them, now I can start to see, hey, even more, where are they living? So like maybe I don't need to see accepted people anymore. I only want to work on these not ready. But okay, so let's use this. So what I can do is now I've tweaked it the way I wanted to. Let's go ahead and save it to a workspace. So for those of you who haven't saved queries, what I'm going to do is just grab this plus sign and I'm going to save to a workspace here. And so for you guys, you're going to come over to that shared workspace. So I can see that I'm in the demo. So you can see a list of all the areas that you want to save it to. So I think I'm going to throw it into this admission workspace. You can choose a sub workspace if you want to. I think I'm just going to throw it in here. Come over to your description and you can add it in. I'm going to do active admission year candidate. Okay, so then I will save my query. Now you can see the name is up here. If you want to get to share that query, you can come up to your URL. You're going to copy it, and then you can just email that to anyone you want. I'm going to throw this in the chat for you guys. If you can see in the chat, oh, everyone. There you go. Okay, so it's in the chat. So you can see the short name is the VC demo right here. What you guys will do is just to remove the VC demo client, and you can add your school short name right there. And if you're not sure what your school short name, when you log into Axiom, you'll be able to see right after this, the axiom.faircross.com, and then you'll see your school short name right after that. So, okay, so that is where we will save it. Oh, you're not authorized to see it. So you'll have to change, what you have to do is just copy instead of clicking on it. Great question. You'll copy the link that's in the chat. You'll copy it here. And so I'll show you. And if I add it, if I paste it and don't hit enter, I can then go back and type in whatever school short name that you are here. And then when you hit enter, you should be able to see it. Okay. All right. I hope that's helpful. Okay, great. So you guys can share. So if you're ever in the Veracross community and you want to share queries between schools, you 1000% can do that. All you have to do is copy it, put it in the URL, don't push enter, and just change that short name. So anytime you guys have it, we love for you to share. All right, so let's look really quick. I don't want us to run out of time. We're going to look at an admission checklist query here. So we're going to start with this find checklist items. And we'll look at some parameters. So let's look. I really want to know if someone hasn't paid their application fee. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like. So if I'll use this checklist one. So if I'm looking for something specific. So if I come over to this checklist item here, and I'm just going to grab this application fee. That's the one I want to look at. And I want to know, is that checklist item complete? And no, it's not complete because I want to know those who haven't done it. So we do those two parameters and I click run. I can see everybody who has not paid their application fee here. And so from here, I can add in over in the search field, this person ID field. So person ID is what we need to send communication through Composer. Okay, so anytime you can send communication through Composer from any query as long as you have added that person ID in. Okay, so here they've completed, they haven't completed it. If I go up to that action menu and I click send, and you can pick whichever channel that you want. I'm going to just grab this general admissions. I didn't add anything super special here that you need to pull into. I can launch. So see that I can start from scratch. I can start from a template. Let's go ahead and just start from scratch. You can add in, your subject, who you want it to be from, what email do they want to reply to. We're going to click continue. And so then you can write whatever message that you want to those fees. Now, please pay application fee. You can add a link. Okay. And I can also add a theme. I don't know if you guys have seen it here on that bottom right. You can pick, and you should during your implementation have some themes here. And a lot of times we have an admission one. Here we go. So I have an admission one and I can apply the theme. And I can make it great. And then so this to kind of point out, we'll get into a little more on like merge fields in just a minute, but when you're pulling from a candidate's query, it's automatically going to default to sending the email to the candidates, which that's not what you want to do most of the time, unless you're working with high school. You're wanting to send it to the parents. So the parents don't have to be in that query. As long as you have the candidate's person ID, it'll bring you to that select recipients, and you're going to see here that it's defaulted to the recipients. But if you click the tile next to it, which is the parent and guardians, it's now going to pull up parent and guardians, and it's going to pull up parent and guardians that have legal custody here. Okay, so you can change it to different parameters, but that's just the default. You can see here everybody that is allowed right now in to send an email to. Okay, and then you'll be able to preview it and then send it out. Okay. So this is our application. We can do more than one checklist in here. So if I want to know that didn't complete their application and their demographics, we can. So then they'll have both. And then going back to subtotaling as our friend, and we can see per student here. So we can see that Beverly's finished her demographics, but not her application fee. Is there a way to pull in all outstanding checklist items into a query to send everyone a list? What is absolutely? So great question. So let's look at it. So if we go back to that query that I said here, okay, so here is all, if we bring in this YAF, that's you're applying for outstanding admission items, then what you would do is come up to this lightning bolt here, and we're going to send an email, but we are going to make one change. So I'm going to come up and I'm going to send it to my general admissions. I do have my person ID. So I do want to point that out. That query we just saved is here. So because I brought in a special parameter that's not typically in our communications, instead of using this default merge, we want a specific merge fail to be able to pull in. So then you can click on this query results here. And let's not do all 900. We'll grab these two to send. So if I can also just select a couple from my list to send to. Okay, so I'm going to pick that query result. I'm going to prepare my 2 recipients. I'm going to launch. You can pull from a draft. Well, let's pull, let me resume my draft, which was like my app fee one. So I kind of already have it set up. I already created this here. The information's already here. Oops. There we go. So here am I write content. We can bring in merge fields. We can do parents, or we can do dear, and we can add in any of these regular merge fields here. So when I click on that the triangle here, you can see here's our default, and then here's this query. But because we've selected query results, we have this tab available for us. So if we click on it, we can see everything that was in that query is now available for us to now merge into this communication record. So let's kind of hop over to this default and let's pull out, a salutation here. So if I go, to right here, if I do my bracket, and if I'm using a default merge field, I'm going to type my bracket, VC, and a colon. And you're going to see the drop down here of just, quick available ones. But I can also start typing, and you can see them here. I can copy and paste them. And I'm going to grab this household salutation. And then this will be whatever household salutation you have for, because you're addressing the parents. You can add it in here. Do my comma, and like the following, let's see, and now let's add in our outstanding. The following checklist items need to be completed. Okay, so now I'm going to bring in my merge field. So instead of using that, the VC, we are going to use data. And so you can see it right here. So if I do a bracket and then I start typing the word data with a colon, now it's bringing up all those additional merge fields from our query. I'm going to grab that here. And so it's already put the bracket in. I'm going to hit enter. And so we can just see what it looks like. Is it pulling the way I want to? I click done and then move on to next. I'm going to select my recipients, which I guess here we go. If you ever are resuming a draft and it's already on that parent tab and you're like, hey, no parents are there, it's because you have to reset it whenever you resume the draft. So you're just going to click on that recipients tile. And then when you click back to the parent tile, those parents will be available. Unfortunately, in our data demo here, we don't have an email address, but if we did, we'll move on and we can see what it looks like. And unfortunately, because we don't have info for in our demo, let me grab somebody that does. Jimmy in our list. Okay, I think Samantha is one. Grab Samantha. Try again. So I'm going to go up to my lightning bolt. I'm going to send my email. I'm going to grab my query. I'm going to pick my channel. Prepare my one recipient here. Launch. I'm going to resume my draft. So I'll start over here. All my information is still there. Let's see. Click on my recipient, Samantha. Okay, good. Yay. All right, so we have Jonathan here. Click next. And so we can see now it's listed the item. So that's just like the short version here. If you wanted to have them up here, like the ones that they're actually missing, we can do that from a find checklist if you wanted to list them out one by one. Okay. So let's look real quick at like one more. So anything that you have in this query, you can use that data. If you add any information, you can bring all this in, grade applying for, current school, the name of the siblings can all be brought into using that data query results tab. So one more quick query I want to show you guys, which is super helpful, are these smart function fields. We don't run out of time. So if we go to a find candidates query here, I'm going to take out my admission leads here. So we have so when we did the checklist, it's going to show checklist items on each line. So when we saw our here, so for Eliza, it's showing each checklist on each line. Let's say I just want to see Eliza in one line, and which you can also bring into then your communications. I go to a candidate's query, I can hop over to my function fields here. I click on function fields. I can see I have this admission enrollment one, and I hop down. You can see I have these checklist one. So I click on that. So I have these function fields, which means it'll pull into this design and will ask a few questions then to then display. So let's see, I want to do this whether or not, let's grab in this admission checklist item status. And so I want to move this up here and see it next to candidate's name. So when I've clicked on that design field, you can see here I have some selections of whether or not they're pending complete. At this point, I want to know all of it, where they are with their specific checklist item. I can come down here now to the bottom, which is this year, the parameter. So I want to look at this year, which is 25, 26. And now for this checklist item, I can come in and select what checklist I want to look at. So if I can click on now that application fee, so it's going to render now. Okay, so you can see this application checklist item. Oops, sorry, sorting there, and its status here. So you can see whether or not it's complete or it's pending. But this is not super helpful. Like if I have to remember what checklist item is it, I can go into that design and click back onto that line, and I can click on here and rename it. So I can add application fee. So when I run it here, then also, if I want to know about another checklist item like that candidate demographics, if I click on here, I can go up to this little gear. If I select the function field that I want to use again, or any of the fields I want to duplicate, if I select it, highlight it, and come up to this gear feature, click on it, and then, oops, yeah, I want to duplicate that selected field, but it didn't duplicate. Hold on. It's being a bugger. Ah, duplicate. Well, you can duplicate it. Or for whatever reason, mine is not working that well. If I double click on it again, it'll come up back up. Okay. So I'll move it up. Okay, and then let's say this time I want to know information here about a different checklist. Let's grab that candidate demographic here. I can come up and I can rename it, and I can find out where they are. And so you can add all of that. So instead now of having multi-lines like we did in that find checklist query, now we have them here in one list. And so with that person ID, you can do your if thans, you know, like I want to know who. And so here also, when we're doing those data queries, those merge fields, those specialty queries, these will come in as merge fields too. So you can just select them one at a time and then add them to your communications. So here are those function fields. And then we can save them to our workspace. There are times where you saved a query and you're like, I hate that name. I don't want it to be that name anymore. You can come over to, let me save this one first. I go to the plus sign, save it. I just do checklist query, back into my space here. But then you decide, I hate that name. I want it to be something different. If you come over to this query tab here, here's where you can rename it to anything else you want. Run it. And then you can see here now I have this asterisk, which means my changes are not saved. So you'll know if you navigate away from this query and come back to it, it'll revert back to where you were. So you come back to this plus sign here and you're going to overwrite it. And so when we overwrite it, the asterisk will go away. There we go. See, the asterisk is gone. You can grab this and share it and send it to wherever you want. Let's see, one last. I think that's good. Yep. I think we are all. I want to be mindful of everyone's time. If you had any last minute questions, I can take a few of them. I am going to grab this survey too and throw it in the survey. It is so super helpful. If you guys had a moment to do this survey, if there's things you liked or want to change or want to see more of, we would love to hear it so that we can make sure that we are doing summer school exactly the way you want it, if what's helpful or what's not helpful. But yeah, so I'll be around for just a couple more minutes to answer any questions. But I thank you guys so much for joining us, and I hope this was helpful. Yes, you'll absolutely get the link from the presentation. So it'll be next week. You'll get it so you guys can take a look. You're very welcome. I'm happy to help all of you guys. And then Veracross University, if you guys haven't had opportunity to kind of delve into the videos and the courses we have there, if your sysadmin needs to give you access to it, it'd be definitely something I would look into. They're like little mini sessions on all things, like a whole admission section. Really can talk about communications and reporting and more. If you're interested in query, I think Veracross superpower is querying. And so there's some advanced querying videos that you can watch. I'm a very visual person. I need to see a visual. So those are available in addition to all the articles that we have. And like I said before, if there's anything that you want to delve into more, need an overview for, you are welcome to then book a support consultant call, and we're happy to meet with you guys. I hope you guys have a great day.